state agencies to be probed by Public Accounts Committee. EMTV's Mount Hagen journalist recovering from bullet wound. And engineers want Alois reinstated.
This is National EMTV News with Helen Sayer.
Good evening. This is Friday's news on EMTV. Thanks for joining us. Next month, the performance of government-owned businesses will come under the spotlight of the Parliamentary Public Accounts Committee. PAC Chairman Connie Iguan made the announcement today, saying the PAC would focus on the performance of public companies as well as SOEs. The inquiry, a result of the Auditor General's report of 2016, which provided a scathing report on the financial reporting performance of government agencies. That report found more than half of public entities failed to prepare financial statements in time for audits.
The Parliamentary Public Accounts Committee today announced their first set of inquiries for this year. According to PAC Chairman Connie Iguan, the committee would be looking into the disappointing performance of government entities in preparing proper timely financial reports for audit purposes. The decision to inquire into these entities spurred on by the tabling of the Auditor General's report of 2016 in November last year.
The committee will closely examine the report of the Auditor General to see how well the public entities have managed their financial affairs to ensure there is transparency, good governance and accountability in public funds. The inquiry will be based on the audit investigation report carried out by the Auditor General and tabled in Parliament on 21st November 2017.
According to Mr. Iguan, the heads of these entities would be summoned to appear before the PAC.
Serious matter noted in the report shows that a total of 60 out of 104 public entities have failed to prepare financial statements on time for audit and for tabling in Parliament. Chief Executive Officers of certain office and public entities will be summoned to come before the committee to explain and give reason as to why they should not be punishing for breach. To be punished for breach of law by not producing financial statement.
Among the entities to be summoned to appear before the PAC, 25 that received a disclaimed opinion from the Auditor General's office in its 2016 report. Deputy Chairman of the PAC, Chris Haiveta, described the performance of government entities as very disappointing given the level of funding that these entities continue to be given from government.
Stage of inquiry is production of documents and evidence for those that have not actually given anything at all. So once we go through all of that and we're satisfied, then we will go on to the next statement, next phase, which is those that have qualified opinions and those that have disclaimed opinions. So,
the committee says given the poor performance from these entities, the PAC is adamant that its inquiries will lead to appropriate action to be taken by Parliament.
We have no reason not to come and give excuses. Excuses will not be tolerated and will not be accepted because we are now giving them ample time before the summonses are formally issued to them.
Funding for tourism initiatives in East New Britain province were raised in Parliament today, with Rabaul MP Dr. Alan Marat questioning the government on the accountability of funding to the tune of 20 million kina. According to Dr. Marat, the 20 million kina was the first component of a 58 million kina funding facility that the government had secured to develop tourism hubs in the country. East New Britain had been one of the provinces identified as a tourism hub in 2014.
As a leading tourism province in the country, East New Britain had been identified as a tourism hub by the government in 2014. With this decision, the province also qualified for funding from development partners to improve tourism services in the province. This had seen the province secure funding to the tune of 58 million kina through an agreement by government and development partners. To date, close to 20 million kina had been drawn down. In a series of questions, Rabaul MP Dr. Marat queried the use of funding which had been received, with the member also questioning the acquittal process which had prevented further drawdown from secured funding to improve tourism in East New Britain.
And eight prioritized areas were earmarked for the expenditure of that 20 million. There was a report that was presented to the Department of Treasury and Finance, and I understand that the World Bank is a little reluctant at the moment to release the other 38 million unless the 20 million kina are properly accounted for. What I'm concerned about is one of the prioritized area. It was the Kokopo Tokwa land mobilization. A total of 5 million was paid. And I believe out of that 5 million kina, 3 million was paid to Raul Tamama Land Development Limited, a shareholder of which land development company was the former Minister for Intergovernment Relations.
In response, Finance Minister James Marape acknowledged the funding support from development partners.
From World Bank is yet to send to us matching $20 million that they've earmarked for to support government in this program. That 20 million kina is our own government's PIP funding that the former treasurer, now the opposition leader, as treasurer, was able to facilitate transfer. An amount to the vicinity of 20 million kina was disbursed for certain projects in that part of our country. The exact specification of what areas the fund meant for is not something that I can get off from the top of my head right away, but I am yet to see the report that the member is alluding to.
Minister Marape also committed to finding out the details of the funding arrangement so that tourism support initiatives could continue to support tourism in East New Britain.
The report that member has, please, you can send across to my office. We will check from the records that you have against the records we have. And I assure you we will be on the ground to check as we give every money from central agency here in as far as finance and treasury is concerned.
MTV's Mount Hagen correspondent who was shot by a stray police bullet yesterday has been treated and is now recovering. Vasinata Yama was in the process of covering a suspected armed holdup in the center of town when police opened fire. She was dragged from the scene by her husband and brother and later realized she had been shot in the lower calf.
TV's Mount Hagen correspondent Vasinata Yama was on her way to work when she was told something of an armed holdup was in progress. Her journal's instincts kicked in. She ran to the shop with her husband Jacob in tow with his phone ready to take pictures.
Police la dispesem crowd sol just tatim karta sol na. Koe mol gol antap lol crowd sol tamol reverse ko beken ogota puran antap lole.
The crowd responded, then became rowdy.
All belate more run go outside the road kisim stone stick.
As Vasinata was taking pictures, she didn't see armed policemen prepare to open fire. It all happened very quickly. Shots were fired into the air, but another police officer with a sidearm shot into the crowd, hitting a bystander and Vasinata.
Em come out just so lem rausim one me sidearm splem nem just mark him line straight nem shoot him mole. So me no look him to na. Same time I had gun perape or some me like rane.
Mitla tingo sem just because I'm got ni wane bagarap lo nible mitla tingo sem nible bagarap so mitla ras na mitla dragi mem na melo road go but mitla ko sanap lo basto finish mitla realize mo sem leg blame bleed.
Yesterday, the police legal officer and the deputy commander for the mobile squad went to the hospital to confirm the shootings. Police are yet to make a statement on the shooting. Vasinata has been discharged and is now recovering at home. Scott Waide, National MTV News, Mount Hagen.
At around 9:30 this morning, the family of the Bao primary school teacher who was beheaded last Monday identified the head of the teacher after it was returned yesterday. The missing head was returned last night and presented to Madang Governor Peter Yama, who received the head and took it to the morgue. The family members were then notified and went to the Modilon Hospital morgue to confirm the face of the teacher killed. The deceased's uncle, Pastor Benny Kamo, says they are now waiting for the Madang provincial government to repatriate the body to Southern Highlands province for burial. The family acknowledges the work of the RPNGC, local member Brian Kramer and the Madang governor for working together in bringing back the missing head.
First time na mi plan film good lo karen etigo body go tasola now em pagrablen tasol karen kam finish na mi plan luksa lo face blend finish so I think anytime tomorrow after tomorrow I got away but mi plan I can go back lo place lo planning thank you long all police na olar bla me bablong Madang thank you Brian. Thank you, Lord, bless you, concern bless you. Mibla thank you, Lord, this lesson in come up also. Na mibla wait that's all, Lord, but working way, mibla la carry go back. Thank you.
The valves at the water PNG plant site at Panim in Madang have been repaired and were in full operation as of 6 p.m. yesterday evening. Madang town residences were without water since Saturday after locals had done extensive damage to the water PNG equipment. The locals damaged the equipment following the unrest in Madang on Monday. Water PNG staff and the contractors started work on Tuesday in getting the equipment fixed to restore water supply into Madang town. Lay police were on the ground providing security for the contractors until all work was completed at 6 p.m. yesterday. The Institute of Engineers in PNG has called on the Works Department to reinstate Brian Alois to his position as the Regional Works Manager for the Momasa region. The Institute made this request and called on Works Minister Michael Nally to provide substantial evidence of his statement in Parliament accusing Mr. Alois of lying during his presentation. IEPNG Deputy President Finkewa Zurino says regulations and procedures are in place for IEPNG members to follow, and David Were, as Works Secretary and a member of IEPNG, should have followed these procedures.
While Brian Alois has been suspended as the Regional Works Manager for Momase, he still remains as the President for Institute of Engineers PNG. According to his deputy, Mr. Alois was suspended yesterday. PNG IE and the Professional Board called on the Works Department to reinstate Mr. Alois.
We also seek immediate reinstatement by the Works Secretary, Mr. Were. We also ask him to immediately reinstate Mr. Alois to his substantive position.
The PNG IE said the papers Mr. Alois presented were from the PNG IE and not from the Works Department. Ms. Finkewa says costs of roads are public knowledge once they are out for tender, and Alois presented what was already public knowledge.
We will stand by and say that yes, roads are inflated. Okay, so as a professional engineering body here, we IPNG refutes claim by the Works Minister that Mr. Alois lied, because that's what came out in Parliament yesterday. Now, if the Minister knows that Mr. Alois is lied, then we demand the facts be produced so that a comparative assessment can be made to justify the claims that Mr. Alois did lie.
Finkewa stressed that proper procedures with IEPNG could have been followed by Works Secretary David Were, who is an existing member of IEPNG and knows their procedures.
Mr. Were is also a member of our institution. He's a member of the Institution of Engineers. Now, the Institution of Engineers has a council, and we have a committee that can investigate people under misconduct. So if Mr. Were was so concerned about what Mr. Alois did, he could have complained to the board. We would have investigated Mr. Alois' conduct, whether he has done something wrong here. So that invitation is still open if Were wants to come.
In addition, IEPNG also stressed the importance of a baseline rate for contractors. While acknowledging that the cost of roads differ in various parts of the country, they stressed that a foundation must be set up by the Works Department.
Paper and the facts which are public knowledge, as presented by our President, is the property of the Institution of Engineers and the Registration Board. So there is a process to be followed. We believe that. So what we are calling upon is that the due process should be that the Secretary should complain to the Council of the Institution of Engineers and the Professional Engineers Registration Board to say, you President has presented a paper which we think is not factual or is incorrect. So therefore we are asserting or asking that the Secretary and the Department should follow a process which is defined in our procedures as a professional body, and Mr. Were, being a registered engineer with this body, should follow our process because it was our paper.
Stacey Yallo, National EMTV News.
You're watching National EMTV News. We go for a break now, but don't go away. We got heaps more for you when we come back. Welcome back. 23 unlawful non-citizens have been deported for various breaches of the Migration Act. This follows a joint operation by several government agencies. Immigration Minister Petrus Thomas explained that the 23 are among other cases the department is working on. The 23 were kept at Bomana Correctional Service before being deported. The agencies involved in the operation included Immigration, Custom, Labour, Bank of PNG, Police, IPA and the Censorship Board. A 25-seat passenger bus travelling from Gerahu to Waigane this morning plunged into the roundabout near the University of Papua New Guinea before crashing onto the UPNG signboard. The overloaded bus was full of school students and workers who were lucky enough to get away unharmed. Passengers in the bus say the bus driver lost control of the gears of the bus failed to work. After the gears of the bus failed to work. Apologies for that. Second in charge of the Papua New Guinea Defence Force, Colonel Raymond has retired as PNGDF Chief of Staff. The retired colonel described the last 2 years working as the Chief of Staff as the toughest challenge of his military life. He departed the military after serving the PNG Defence Force for almost 41 years. Former Chief of Training, Captain Philip Polewara, has been appointed as the new PNG Defence Force Chief of Staff.
Colonel Numa was farewelled in a small parade at the PNGDF headquarters in Port Moresby. He was escorted to the parade ground after a meeting with senior officers of the PNGDF. The ceremony came as a surprise for Colonel Numa.
This is the biggest surprise for me this morning. I wasn't expecting this, but it's a great honor this morning to say a few words before I depart.
Colonel Numa joined the PNGDF as a cadet in December 1977. His military career began soon after. He passed out of the Joint Forces Training College in 1980. In his 41 years in the Army, Colonel Numa served as an infantry officer and held appointments as platoon commander and intelligence officer in both the 1st and 2nd Royal Pacific Islands Regiment. Before becoming the Chief of Staff in 2016, Colonel Numa served as Chief of PNG Defence Force Training.
There's been a roller skater in the last 2 years. I thank you for the support that you give as a Chief of Staff in the last 2 years. I've been a Chief of Staff, but as a team, we've been working as a team, and you played your role as a branch head, and made my job easier to help the commander run the PNG Defence Force.
Colonel Numa's successor is Captain Philip Polewara. He is a naval officer who has served 34 years in the PNGDF.
Don't expect new policies. We all serve the command of PNGDF. and his intent is clear. And in terms of from Navy perspective, I'm taking over a ship that is in mid-ocean. It's just the captains have changed, but the ship is the same. And the course has been set, and we will take that course. Some of the things that he handed over that I will see to the end, I would like to make it clear at the beginning, that branch head and directors, you will not be happy with me. I don't want to be your friends, but I have to do my job according to law.
Commander of PNGDF Gilbert Toropo said Colonel Umma has done extremely well in the last 2 years as the Chief of Staff.
As the Chief of Staff, when you took over a little over 2 years, I want to say that it has not been an easy time for the office of the Chief of Staff. PNG Defence Force has been going through a reformation period and growing the PNG Defence Force with limited funds and limited staff capacity. And to expect the results out of these challenges is an enormous task for Chief of Staff to coordinate all the efforts and the moving parts in the PNG Defence Force.
The official handover and the farewelling was witnessed by senior officers of the PNG Defence Force. Thekla Gunga, National MTV News.
Secretary to State and Catholic Pope Cardinal Pietro Parolin paid a courtesy visit to Government House this morning. Before meeting the Governor-General Sir Bob Dadai, Cardinal Pietro signed the government invitation book before entering the House. He was greeted by the Governor-General. They then had a closed-door meeting and a toast before exchanging of gifts. After an hour, the Cardinal left Government House for a Holy Mass at St. Joseph Catholic Church. Prior to that, Cardinal Pietro visited Prime Minister Peter O'Neill at his Parliament office. The Cardinal is in the country for the Oceania Bishop Conference. The Federation of Catholic Bishops' Conferences of Oceania is now underway in Port Moresby with more than 80 bishops from across the region. The effects of climate change on nations and the economies was the talking agenda in yesterday's meet. Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin gave the opening remarks yesterday. The Cardinal identified the widespread scourges of unsustainable development, exploitative industries and unjust land usage. He pleaded to policymakers to practice responsible and modest decision-making. The conference will end next Tuesday, the 17th of April. A 25-seater passenger bus traveling from Garahu to Waigani this morning plunged into the roundabout near the University of Papua New Guinea before crashing onto the UPNG signboard. The overloaded bus was full of school students and workers who were lucky enough to get away unharmed. Passengers in the bus say the bus driver lost control after the gears of the bus failed to work.
Mila kalau walk na bakal apa basa na. On the way down there, kita rumah masani para pe, mas soft blown mas prono. Na mana ad dos dia na, mila heading straight lo to slap eh.
Especially morning hours so all walk line na plant student walk line chol blagam. But no sibila bagara scratch na board mila chile lekan na board. Tula driver na boskru escape car stop.
Unfortunately, it's unfortunate that we experience this problem. It's very important now that, road safety is very important. All the buses, all the PV buses, passengers' lives are very important. So if you can see the damage that has been done, it's really fortunate that none of the passengers have suffered major injuries or so. But it's important for the traffic and for everyone to ensure that all the PMV buses that are on the city or the transport passengers have to be in good conditions.
You're with Friday's News. We'll have more of the day's other stories on the other side of this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the news. 10 police officers in Leh are now qualified to conduct training on custody management after completing the Train the Trainer package. The training covered the required skills in performing guard duties, including the legal procedures involved in keeping suspects in custody. Facilitator Senior Inspector Paul Kipak said this is also a way to improve the processes and hopefully minimize the number of complaints made against police. The training was held in partnership with the Australian Federal Police.
These trainings are being done to improve custody management in the local police cells. This Train the Trainer course has equipped these officers to train other police officers on the correct and legal procedures involved in keeping suspects or prisoners in custody.
So that we can minimize those criticisms and complaints from the public and the courts and the offenders. And then we can, if any member falls out of the line and do things which are not required by the procedures of the law and the police force, they are liable for disciplinary actions. And
the training curriculum was developed under the PNG Australian Policing Partnership and the Bomana Training College. After completing the training, these officers were given certificates. Amongst them was pioneer female police officer Senior Chief Sergeant Maria Eyuga and the regional trainer for Northern Command Chief Inspector Paul Bai.
It's basically on the areas that we were lacking in law, process and procedures and practice in a cell management system here in Leh.
The Train the Trainer package was also passed on to Mr. Bai to continue rolling out trainings for the province and the Northern Command.
We're going to roll out to our police officers who are out there performing so that they do the right thing when they place prisoners in the cells.
This was also seen as the preparation towards the opening of the Leh Central's new cell blocks, which includes a processing office, juvenile and the holding cells. Lucy Kopana, National EMTV News, Leh.
Turning overseas now, U.S. President Donald Trump says a decision on military action in Syria could come very soon or not so soon at all. The U.S. president is talking to U.S. allies on how to respond to the weekend suspected chemical attack, as France claims it has evidence that the Syrian regime is to blame. Meanwhile, Moscow's new ambassador warns he can't exclude the possibility of war between Russia and the U.S.
Yesterday, a strike was coming. Today, the president was not so definitive.
We're having a meeting today on Syria. We're having a number of meetings today. We'll see what happens. We're obviously looking at that very closely. It's too bad that the world puts us in a position like that.
Earlier, he tweeted, never said when an attack on Syria would take place. Could be very soon or not so soon at all. Defence Secretary James Mattis faced questions from members of Congress on whether retaliation is justified.
I believe there was a chemical attack and we're looking for the actual evidence. The OPCW, this is the Organization for the Chemical Weapons Convention. We're trying to get those inspectors in probably within the week.
Incoming Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told senators the president doesn't need their authorisation before a strike.
I believe that he has the authority he needs to do that today. I don't believe we need a new AUMF for the president to engage in the activity that you described.
The French claim they have evidence chemical weapons were used by the Syrian regime in the attack.
We have proof that last week, nearly 10 days ago, chemical weapons were used, at least chlorine, and that they were used by Bashar al-Assad's regime.
Britain also appears to be on board, while Russia continues to deny the use of chemical weapons by Syria and launches more verbal attacks on the West.
Doctors and chemical defence specialists have been to Douma, where chemical weapons were allegedly used, but they found no traces of them, no casualties or victims of this mythical chemical attack. The West stubbornly refuses to listen.
Late today, the president met with his national security team on Syria. In a statement, the White House said that no final decision has been made, that the US continues to assess intelligence and remains in conversations with its partners and allies.
Climatologists are warning that the intensity of extreme weather is increasing and the impacts will be more devastating. So, how can we prepare for the inevitable disasters that we are likely to face? Getting ready for a disaster has become a little bit easier with a phone app developed by the Red Cross.
The Tweed River in northern New South Wales is one of the country's most flood-prone areas.
So the 4 steps to prepare your household.
And until last year, this group of neighbours at Condong thought they were prepared for a flood.
It usually comes to the second top step, and Mum, being here for many, many years, said that's the highest it's ever been. And next minute it's coming through the floorboards. Scary. It was really scary, the fact that it went to that high. You know, came through the house.
The Salmons lost irreplaceable photos and documents, and there was no evacuation plan.
Well, a lot of it I wouldn't have thought of because I hadn't thought of a disaster.
The Australian Red Cross is finding that Linda Salmon's experience is on the increase.
We are seeing more intense disasters. I think they're having more complex and bigger impacts on communities. I think that people are often surprised by how much of an impact a disaster has on their life. I don't think people have prepared for those, and I think that's what we're trying to talk to people about and do some things beforehand to lessen some of those impacts.
Getting in the know is your first vital step.
For years, the Australian Red Cross has been running face-to-face sessions with people like Linda Salmon who live in disaster-prone areas. Now they've developed those sessions into a phone app that any of us can use to get ready for a disaster.
It invites you to think about who your emergency key contacts are and who are the people who are going to provide you with the support that you're going to need in an emergency. It also asks you some questions about sorts of things that might be risks for you, things that you think are important, and then it takes those and it provides you with a list of action items that you can take. And at the end of the process, what it's working towards is a plan, an emergency plan for you that you can then share on with your loved ones, with your support network, with whomever.
In developing the app, there's been a surprising discovery.
The important things in terms of recovering from what we see from communities is less about the physical things and more about the intangible things like your routine, like your relationships, etc. It's that sense of I'm back to a place that I consider normal. It's going to be stressful, but it makes it a little bit less stressful for people.
A P&O cruise ship is heading back to Australia after a search was called off for a woman who fell overboard in the South Pacific.
A search was sparked yesterday afternoon after a woman fell from the top deck of the P&O liner Pacific Dawn around 300 kilometres west of New Caledonia. The ship retraced its path and searched the area last night and into this morning without success. That search was suspended at 7:30 this morning, given the severe weather conditions of 4-metre swells and 30-knot winds, and that the woman was not wearing a life jacket.
It is with a very heavy heart that I need to let you know that we have been unable to locate our guest. The strong wind and choppy seas made our search extremely challenging.
People here at Brisbane's Portside Wharf who are boarding and departing similar cruises say they're shocked.
Horrific, to think how, if you go overboard, how long it takes for one of those ships to pull up. Yes, bloody awful.
It makes you feel sick. It's terrible. It must have just been a freak wave. You just can't imagine how it would happen.
Well, it's very hard for someone to go overboard. I struggled to think how someone would overboard.
A P&O spokeswoman says the investigation will now fall into the hands of the Queensland Police Service, along with British maritime authorities, as the ship is registered in the UK. The ship has resumed its course for Brisbane and is expected to arrive on Sunday morning.
Turning back home now, Southern Highlands Acting Administrator Thomas Elu was today presented with a 10,000 kina cheque towards the earthquake disaster relief efforts. Mr. Elu, who received the cheque, says this will be the first money that will go into the newly created provincial disaster account. The cheque was presented by PNG musicians who performed at a concert on Saturday and raised 30,000 kina for earthquake relief for the Southern Highlands and Hela provinces.
Mr. Elu, who is in Port Moresby, was happy that Southern Highlands band Wame Blood took the lead in organising the Artists for a Cause concert for the sake of their people. Alois stressed that despite the chaos in Mandi town, he was touched that young people are showing positive behavior in helping their province.
They are suffering. We're all supposed to be working together to help them and revive them from the suffering. So you got to learn. So you all picking you take him course here, long helping me play along, give him little toy, me play me like you broke my heart, because that's what every Southern Highlander should be doing, from political level to everyone, because usat can by helping more. I'm all picking in Southern Highlands right there. This is the time to put your hand up, put your differences aside, and let's all work together.
The artists who had presented 10,000 kina earlier this week to Hela provincial government will also be presenting a 10,000 kina check to the Pimaga Health Centre tomorrow in Kutubu, Southern Highlands Province.
Call him artists for a cause. We all get artists lo Papua New Guinea can boom lo hosting this event lo raising funds lo towards lo disaster. So we raising almost 30,000.
The artists had made a total of 30,000 kina from the Artists for a Cause concert over the past weekend and say they are happy to give back to their fans.
Talent that we have, we can sing. We've got followers throughout the country. We can make difference. So that's how we did it, and we make enough money to support. If there's a time we will do it again, and this time we will do it bigger. We want to do it bigger. We're not trying to do only 30,000. At least we're gonna make at least 100 or at least something thousand we can make out of this course, so we can give it to our people. So we are doing it for free. We are not doing it for Mibla or kissing money or kissing big name or no. Basically, we are helping our people. It's for our people. It's for Highlands and Highlands. So whatever we do, and back all the people for Mibla.
Stacey Yellow, National MTV News.
You're at National MTV News. Stay tuned for all the day's sporting action in Trukai Sports coming up next.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome to Trukai Sports. The SB-PNG Hunters left today for their Round 6 clash against the Redcliffe Dolphins. The match will take place tomorrow at Dolphins Stadium.
Winning their away matches has been an issue for the Hunters. They've had an awful start to their 2018 campaign, losing all their away matches. This week, Marum has made changes to his starting lineup again, naming recruit Junior Bobby on the wings and Patrick Moria to make his debut off the bench. The team's combinations and executions is one thing they're still working on. Adene Gebi has been put under pressure after Marum put him to start at fullback in place of the injured Adex Wera. If the Hunters lose this weekend, this will be their 4th loss of the season. Redcliffe will be out for revenge against the Hunters, as their dreams of making it to the grand final was shattered in their semi-final defeat last year. Both teams will be competing for the annual Stan Joyce Cup, which is currently being held by the Dolphins. They've both played 9 games each, with the Hunters winning 5 of their home games with 1 win, 1 draw and 2 losses away. Lajal Vet, National MTV Sports.
Football Federation PNG and its executive board members held a press conference yesterday to highlight PNG FA's invite to discuss in-house matters affecting both factions. This invite to FFPNG comes after the resignation of former PNG FA President David Chung. Godwin Eki reports.
Football Federation PNG, spearheaded by President John Capinato, says their board members are willing to sit down with PNG FA Senior Vice President John Wesley Gonjuan and his board to discuss issues affecting both parties in a face-to-face meeting. Capinato says it is time needed the invite has come from PNG FA so that all member associations can work together to go through the statutes of FFPNG and the constitution of PNG FA. He says he is willing to work closely with FAPNG to identify errors and answer questions that have been left unattended for quite some time.
We will sit down, we will have our own things to discuss with them. They will also have their things to discuss. And majority of Mibla 12 player, 6 player. You need him Olgaralo sit down, because OFC will come and check this place. I'm willing to fly everybody down, willing to sit down, and something. I want football. Football is bigger than me, bigger than everybody. This country is a sleeping giant in football, and I've said it already.
An issue raised by Capinato's board was why some member associations of PNGFA failed to carry out their national duties to host events, while the 12-member association of FFPNG has managed to do so.
What I'm appealing to them now, before we sit in the round table, is that let's come together, let's sit down, and let's look at the compliance issues. It's not only us who's going to do that. It is them also that go to compliance to that too. So for me and my executive here is that we have an ordinary Congress which is coming up in August. If we get together early, we can sit down and look at those compliance issues from all sides, and then we can agree together, then call for an ordinary Congress.
Capinato says now that Chung is no longer the president of PNGFA, it is time that things are discussed in a way he calls the Melanesian way. He says compliance between the factions is very much what is needed.
Provisions allow us for an ordinary Congress. We need to get in. Everybody is a leader. All the presidents have to elect good leaders to run football in this country. Right now, I'm not going to work with an organization that is ill as a problem. Football is big. It's a global game. We need to run it professionally.
Capinato says if both factions don't comply or disagree, FIFA and OFC will be engaged to mediate, and if not, PNG may be stood down as member of the FIFA and OFC, which may ruin the status of football in the country. Godwin Eki, National, MTV Sports.
PNG Volleyball Federation President Kiladik has told MTV Sports that 2015 Pacific Games and 2017 Mini Pacific Games gold medalist Richard Kilarupa will be replaced by Rolly Forova. Forova was identified and scouted through international events that he attended in both Queensland and New South Wales.
The men's beach volleyball saw Papua New Guinea take on...
Mini Pacific Games was the last event Kilarupa played in before his retirement earlier this year. President Kiladik says Rupa's retirement didn't come as a surprise, as he had family obligations to attend to.
You know, there's always that time for every athlete. They make those decisions for the sake of their family. So we accepted this and we're moving towards trying to identify a replacement.
He says before the news broke, plans to replace Kila were already underway, where junior players sent to Australia were used to identify potential replacement.
Last year, we, in terms of beach volleyball, there was, I think, 5 months of pre-planning and pre-preparations. Our beach volleyball athletes went down to Gold Coast for some time, for 3 occasions. And during those training occasions, one young player was identified as a potential beach volleyball player. So Rolly Forova was identified. He's a young player coming through, and he's a very fine player. He's a really good player. At the moment, you know, his class on his own, so far as indoor is concerned. So he was identified by Sen. Sen Carter was our coach for the national team, and she recommended that Rolly would take Richard's place. So that has been done.
Kila thanked Rupa for being patriotic in representing his country and his services to PNG Volleyball Federation Inc.
You know, those players who have been playing in the national team, whether it's indoor or beach, the positions are still on offer. Those positions are still on offer for any other player to take over their positions. Doesn't mean that they're international players and then they hold those positions. It's not a lifetime position. So if you perform well, you maintain. If you don't perform well, then you are dropped and somebody else will take your place.
Winning gold at the Mini Pacific Games being the last event for beach volleyball, despite missing out on the Commonwealth Games qualifiers, PNG Volleyball Federation is patiently awaiting invitations to the Oceania events. While the sport is still gaining popularity in the country, more events will be organized after the national championships to attract interest. Godwin Eki, National, MTV Sports.
You're watching Chukai Sports. We'll be back with more after these messages.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome back to Trukai Sports. To the Commonwealth Games now, 2 Indian athletes have been kicked out of Australia following another needle scandal.
I think they were really forced to. We're talking about different athletes today, but it's exactly the same team. Serial offenders, India. Games officials have always said they have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to needles inside the village. But until today, India had only ever been given stern reprimands. This time, though, triple jumper Rakesh Babu and walker Irfan Thodi were kicked out after a cleaner found syringes in their room. There were no drugs discovered, but those involved were ordered to leave on the first flight home. India's chef de mission, general team manager and athletics manager have also all been reprimanded.
And that ends Trukai Sports. The weather details coming up next.
Trukai Sports. Trukai Sports.
The weather details were proudly brought to you by Dulux, celebrating 50 years in PNG and the only paint made in PNG.
Taking a look at the weather tonight in the southern region only, fine with showers in Port Moresby, showers in Daru and Kerema, some afternoon showers in Alotau and a few showers in Popondetta.
The weather details were proudly brought to you by Dulux, celebrating 50 years in PNG and the only paint made in PNG.
And that's the news, sports and weather for today, Friday, April 13th, 2018. On behalf of the entire MTV News team, pleasant viewing. Have a safe weekend. Good night.